Well, the Eagles were looking for a spark last week. Now they're hoping to make it a flame. Standing in their way, the Arizona Cardinals, and a pretty hot offense as we prepare for a battle of two dual-threat quarterbacks, both out of Oklahoma. Here's your weather report from our friends at NBC 10. Not too humid out there in the desert, 63 degrees in December. Thanks to NBC 10 for that weather report. And welcome to the Kickoff Show presented by Axalta. Amy Campbell along with Fran Duffy coming to you live. And Fran, I am so pumped for this matchup. I think we're going to see such an interesting chess match on both sides and possibly a lot of points.
Yeah, it'll be something to watch here. Obviously, two teams that are trying to get over the hump offensively. Kyler Murray in his second year as a starter. Jalen Hurts, just his second start, right? So excited to see these two former Oklahoma quarterbacks, Heisman Trophy finalists versus Heisman Trophy winner. Excited to see how these two guys face off here today.
All right, let's get back out to Glendale as the Eagles are warming up for today's game. Thanks, of course, as always, to PA Lottery for bringing us the coverage of these warm-ups. And Fran, let's start with Jalen Hurts. He's getting his second start of the season. Got the win last week, a great team win against the New Orleans Saints. He has another challenge this week against the Cardinals defense. It's going to be interesting, though. Look, we talk about both quarterbacks coming out of Oklahoma. Jalen kind of giving Kyler a nod, saying he paved the way for me there with the Sooners. What do you think this test is? The second game for a quarterback. Now there's some film on this guy. What are the Cardinals preparing for here?
Well, certainly they're going to have an idea of what the Eagles are going to try and do schematically, right? I mean, they've got a full week of game film now. They have an understanding that, look, this offense is not going to look the same that it looked over the first 13 weeks of the season. I think when you look at what Jalen Hurts has to do, he's going to have to make sure that he finds ways to win from the pocket, because that's what Arizona's going to try and do today. They're going to try and make him win from a phone booth, from those tight spaces. So, there were times last week where he was able to roll out of the pocket, both by design and as kind of an ad-lib moment. How can he perform now going out on the road, his first road start against a very fast, aggressive Arizona defense? They love to blitz, and they've got a lot of speed on the field at the second and third level. So this will certainly be a big test for Jalen Hurts. This Arizona defense is not one to sleep on.
Well, and look, we've talked about this Arizona defense, what everyone's talked about all week long, Hassan Reddick, the 5-sack performance against the New York Giants. Last week, though, this Eagles offensive line, for the first time this season, no sacks against Jalen Hurts. His legs, of course, probably a big part of that equation, which brings me to the offensive starters for today, and a little bit more rotating, a little more shuffling on the offensive line. As we take a look at the offensive starters for today, we're going to see Matt Pryor at the right tackle position. Jack Driscoll going to be missing some time after he was injured last week. Next man up mentality, a tough test, but of course a quarterback who is able to escape the pressure a little bit, Fran.
Yeah, and certainly that will help, but this offensive line is still going to have a big test today against this Arizona defense. You mentioned Hassan Reddick, 5 sacks last week against the division rival New York Giants. Well, he lines up mostly on the offensive right side, so Matt Pryor will be seeing a lot of Hassan Reddick, and it's going to be how can he stop his speed, his quickness, his flexibility off the edge. That's going to be a big game within a game to watch here this afternoon down in the desert, Amy, because when you look at Reddick, he's really starting to kind of get into a groove coming off the corner. They like to use him in a lot of different stunts and twists, and that certainly helps him. The Eagles have had issues with that, and I think that could be something to watch. However, that being said, because of the way Jalen Hurts is able to escape the pocket, sometimes that can back defensive coordinators off a little bit from using those stunts, because you don't want to create some creases in the defense where now the quarterback can take off. So that'll be an interesting little cat and mouse game between Jalen Hurts and Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Cardinals.
All right, well, let's go to Jalen Mills here and the Eagles secondary, which is going to be a point of discussion today. Let's take a look at the defensive starters here for the Eagles. And a lot of injuries to the secondary, which means a lot of opportunity. And we're looking at Kevon Seymour. This is his first start since 2017. He played a little bit last week against the Saints, but that was the first football he's played since 2017. He had multiple surgeries, multiple injuries, found himself completely out of the league, working at a tire shop, waiting for that call, waiting waiting for that opportunity. He got a gym membership. He talked about it earlier this week. If you haven't seen his press conference, this guy absolutely stole the hearts of the media, and I'm sure all the fans that saw it. His wife, his 3 kids, he's trying to support, and now he's so excited to have this opportunity here in this Eagles secondary. That, Fran, there's a lot of injuries to this secondary. We talked about it this week. People know if they've been paying attention. Rodney McLeod to IR. Avonte Maddox is going to miss some time as well, and then Darius Slay out in the concussion protocol. That means opportunity for guys like Seymour, guys like Michael Jacquet, who also was injured last week. Rudy Ford will also be back at the safety position. Kayvon Wallace and Marcus Epps at safety, but Jim Schwartz loves the positionless DB. So what kind of creative matchups do you think we could see in the secondary here against a really talented Arizona receiving corps?
Yeah, I think when you look at that group right there, the offensive line, it's an interesting kind of symmetry over to the defensive secondary, because when you talk about those positionless players, really what you're talking about is versatility. And the Eagles have had to use that versatility along the offensive line this year. Different guys playing right side, left side, guard, tackle. Well, last week in the secondary, as you mentioned, you saw 3 starters go out in the span of a quarter and a half, and the 4th starter, Jalen Mills, had to switch positions. So you had 4 entirely new sets of players playing in the second half against the New Orleans Saints. Now, Jalen Mills is going to play at safety here in this matchup. Ultimately, how is he going to match up against this Arizona receiving corps? How are the Eagles going to handle DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald? They've got a lot of different pass catchers, and they're going to spread you out. More 4-receiver sets than anybody in the National Football League so far this season. So when you look at this secondary, how are they going to try and deploy these guys? Nickel Roby-Coleman, he's going to get the start on the outside, it looks like. He has spent most of his time in the slot. Will they slide him in when they go into sub package? How will that impact the rest of the guys in the secondary? That's going to be something that I'm trying to keep an eye on here early in this game, because you've got a lot of defensive backs with versatile skill sets. I'm anxious to see ultimately how they're deployed against a very talented group of pass catchers here for the Cardinals.
Well, let's start breaking down that Cardinals offense a little bit. We'll get into Kyler Murray in a minute, but just to kind of go big picture here, of course, we know Cliff Kingsbury. He's from the air raid tree. Spread him out, lots of receivers like you talked about there. This is the fourth best offense in the NFL. They're averaging 390 yards per game, and even with this receiver core, with the big names there, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, an OG at the position, and Christian Kirk, who's been super productive this year, they are more dominant in the run game than the passing game. This is the 4th best rushing offense in the league. Of course, Kenyon Drake is their leading rusher, but Kyler Murray gets it done on the ground with his legs as well. And when Kyler Murray's escaping the pocket and breaking loose with those big runs, this team usually has some success. Let's talk about the receiving corps, though. What is it that they do so well that makes them so deadly in the passing game?
Yeah, I think really, look, these guys are not going to be hard to find, because just though you mentioned Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, comes from the air raid. And for those that don't know, that's a version of the spread offense that has really kind of proliferated all around college football, and its schemes have really transitioned up to the NFL. But he's really the first coach that has fully embraced it and said, yeah, this is exactly how we're going to play. Now, he's going to have certain wrinkles, but when you talk about how these receivers are going to be used, more often than not, these guys are going to be found on one side of the formation. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to line up to the left side. Christian Kirk, he's going to line up to the right side. Larry Fitzgerald is going to be the slot. They're not going to move them around all that much. The other part of this, a lot of wide receiver screens, more receiver screens than anybody in the NFL. This is an offense that wants to create yards after catch. They're one of the best yards after catch offenses in the league. The reason why that's big for this game, the Eagles have not been great in terms of their tackling overall. They've had a lot of missed tackles. You go back to early in the season, that has consistently shown up. So they need to be sure tacklers in this game. The guys that are playing, that are out there, they have got to make sure when these short catches are made, you've got to prevent them from being big plays. They're happy if it's a 4-yard, 5-yard gain, but you can't let those little wide receiver screens turn into 12, 15, 18-yard chunks, because that's what this Cardinals offense wants. They want to go up-tempo. They're going to spread you out, and it is an east-west pass game. They're going to try and stretch the field a little bit with Christian Kirk, but more often than not, it's going to be short, quick throws, up-tempo, and move the football down the field. And by the way, when they spread you out, that's when they're going to run the ball, as you mentioned, with Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds, and then certainly as well with Kyler Murray.
DeAndre Hopkins, their most productive receiver, already over 1,100 yards receiving. He's 5th in the NFL, 5 touchdowns as well. Let's talk a little bit more about Kyler Murray. He, this season already, 712 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, 23 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I thought Brandon Graham described him really well. He said one little flinch and he's gone. You have to run to the ball, get him in the numbers. You can't assume you're going to make the tackle. This defense, of course, has faced a lot of mobile quarterbacks this season, but Brandon Graham says, I think he might be the best one yet because he's real quick. What kind of dynamic athlete and really dangerous threat in the passing game and the running game is an athlete like Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I mean, he is as dynamic as Lamar Jackson when you talk about just how twitchy, how electric he is as an athlete. So that's certainly something that the Eagles have got to contend with. That being said, the difference between the Baltimore offense and the Arizona offense is that Baltimore really leans heavily into the run game, and namely the quarterback run game, all the different option plays and all the different creative things they do from that aspect of it. Even if you look back to the Eagles last week with Jalen Hurts, you saw a wide variety of run schemes that featured the quarterback. We saw him, downhill on design quarterback runs. We saw him running to the perimeter, all the different option runs. You don't necessarily see that with Kyler Murray in this offensive scheme. Really, the only stuff you're going to see, every once in a while, you'll see some zone read, and the Eagles have got to be able to contend with that. We've talked about that numerous times here on this show. After that, it's a lot of scrambles. It's not going to be as many design runs. They'll run a quarterback draw here and there when they go empty and spread everybody out. But more often than not, a lot of Kyler Murray's runs are going to be those scrambles. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the show as to how you kind of keep him contained from that aspect. But ultimately, the Eagles have got to make sure he does not beat you with his legs. Because really, when this offense is humming, it's because he is taken off for big chunks in the run game, kind of making defenses pay with his feet.
Well, and if you're really looking for potentially I'm not going to say weakness, but perhaps unremarkable aspect of the Cardinals offense, you could point to the offensive line. With Kyler Murray's legs, of course, he helps them out there as well. But the Eagles, the defensive line, the strength of their defense, how do you like the matchup for the Eagles defensive line today?
I really like it. I think that's going to be a way that the Eagles have got to take over for this game, because when you look at how banged up they are in the secondary, my guess is, and this is just a guess on my part, you're not going to see a lot of man-to-man. The Eagles have been a huge man-to-man defense here this year in 2020, but without Darius Slay, without Avonte Maddox, my guess is you'll see more zone coverage. And with that being said, I think you're going to need that defensive line to really make sure not only get home to Murray, but keep him contained. That's going to be a big test. That being said, this Arizona Cardinals offense, they've got some guys, especially on that right side. You look at Brandon Graham's side, Fletcher Cox's side, where I think they can win some of those one-on-one matchups. That'll be one of the things for sure for Eagles fans to keep an eye on here as the game gets underway.
And TJ Edwards providing a boost as he's back this week after missing last week as well with an injury. Let's go over to the Cardinals defense a little bit and kind of break it down, because we've heard this week from players, from coaches, it's a unique defensive call by them, according to Doug Peterson, that they do a lot of interesting stuff, that it's not a defense like really anywhere else in the NFL. They're the 13th total defense. They're better against the pass than against a run. They play a lot of man-to-man, but they've also given up the 6th most rushing yards to quarterbacks, so that could be great for a Jalen Hurts matchup there. Their leading tackler, former Eagles linebacker Jordan Hicks, with 101 tackles. What makes the Cardinals defense so unique?
Well, they're really fast. I said it earlier. You go to the second level and you look at linebacker with Jordan Hicks. You look at the rookie first-round pick, Isaiah Simmons. He is really starting to kind of come into his own. Devondre Campbell's the veteran there in that group as well, next to those two. But when you look at Simmons, I really feel that he will be a big impact player for the Cardinals in this game moving forward. I really kind of think he might be the spy against Jalen Hurts. Just something to watch here for this matchup, because Simmons, he's kind of been the eraser for them. He'll match up against tight ends, dynamic running backs out of the backfield in the pass game, but against the Eagles in this matchup, I wonder if they'll kind of use him as a spy. That'll be something I'll be keeping an eye on. But then you look at the rest of this defense. You mentioned earlier positionless players with the Eagles. Well, the Cardinals are really kind of the poster child for the positionless player on that side of the football. You're looking at Budda Baker. He's got safety nickel versatility. Patrick Peterson lines up everywhere. I mentioned Isaiah Simmons. People all talked about whether he was a safety or a linebacker moving up to the NFL. Hassan Reddick, was he a linebacker or a defensive end? All these guys with very versatile skill sets. Well, they're going to really come into this game having that versatility to attack the Eagles in a lot of different ways.
All right, we'll see the offensive game plan, what the Eagles bring. Of course, we saw what they did last week with Jalen Hurts. A lot of rumblings this week that this coaching staff could add some new wrinkles in this matchup. So this is going to be a fun one, in my opinion. As we bring it back to the East Coast, we are now going to welcome in the Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro, joining us from Lincoln Financial Field. Dave, you're looking so festive. I love it. I love it.
Well, it is that time of the season, right?
Absolutely.
We are celebrating this week, yes.
I am here for it. I love it. Of course, last week we saw Jalen Hurts. We talked about it. He had his first NFL start, his first NFL win. What's the big picture key to success for him consistently playing quarterback at an NFL level?
You know, Amy, I've been listening to you and Fran talk, and we've talked all week about the mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, and Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and Cam Newton, and that's all well and good, but the real guy that you want to emulate is Russell Wilson. And the reason what separates him from everybody else is his ability from the pocket. And ultimately, having seen Randall Cunningham reach a level and not get to a higher level, and to see Donovan McNabb get to the highest level, and to see Michael Vick not quite get to that level of being a pocket passer. All of this mobility is wonderful. But as we've seen, for example, with Lamar Jackson in the postseason, the defenses catch up to you. So for Jalen Hurts, and it starts today, Arizona wants to take away that edge. They want to take away that mobility. They want to take away those rush lanes. The Eagles want to do the same thing with Kyler Murray, make these quarterbacks win from the pocket. And to me, that's the true test of a quality NFL quarterback. So as we watch Jalen Hurts, and we are wowed by his running ability and his poise and his calm, his cool, his leadership, take note of him from the pocket week to week and look for progress there. That will be the determining factor. As far as him becoming an elite quarterback in this league, you got to win from the pocket. The legs will only take you so far.
Dave, I 100% agree with you. That being said, what is your Fox Bet storyline here for this matchup?
All right, so my storyline is this. You know, the Eagles, this secondary is unbelievable, Fran, with Mills and Epps at safety, with Nickel Roby-Coleman, Michael Jacquet at cornerback. How in the world do they compensate for the devastating injuries in the secondary? I would imagine, as you said, zone defense, keep everything in front of you, make Arizona win from the red zone, where they are not particularly good, and they were not good at all last week in their victory over the Giants. And then on the offensive side, the offensive line, here we go again, another starter at right tackle, and it's a difficult matchup for Matt Pryor against the speed off the edge that the Cardinals will bring. So that's what I'm looking for. How do they compensate for yet another round of significant injuries?
Yeah, certainly a lot to overcome there. What about your Fox Bet key to the game for the Eagles to get the victory today?
Well, look, we want to get Jalen Hurts to the edge, and we want to get Miles Sanders to the edge, and we want to get that run game going, and the Cardinals are a bit banged up along their defensive front. So as the Cardinals try to take away that edge and take away that out-of-pocket mobility for Jalen Hurts, how do the Eagles coaching staff, how do they design to get Hurts onto the edge, to give him some run-pass options, to get the ball to Miles Sanders? It is so interesting to watch how much more dangerous Miles Sanders is when you've got Jalen Hurts as another run threat. So I expect the Eagles to try to run the football today, and can they get to the edge? To me, that is the key to the game.
All right, something to watch for sure. Should be a fun matchup. Dave, thanks so much. We'll check in with you after the game.
Ho, ho, ho.
Yes. I am feeling it. I am feeling festive. All right, Fran, now I'm just feeling like, why didn't I wear like something more festive today? All right, for you, what is this game going to come down to?
Well, we've talked about it a little bit, and I think ultimately it comes down to containing Kyler Murray, right? Because when you're talking about going up against an opposing quarterback, you're trying to disrupt him. And for a lot of quarterbacks, that means pressuring him, getting off his spot. But look at Kyler Murray's rushing numbers. So many of it, as I talked about earlier, come on these scrambles. And that's that last line there, the third most scrambles in the NFL. So containing Kyler Murray, it's not about disrupting him and getting him off his spot. You have to keep him in the pocket. That means the defensive line, maintain those rush lanes. Do not allow him to break, contain of the pocket. Then you look if you try and blitz him. If you try and blitz him up the middle, that gives him the ability to get outside the pocket. That plays into his hands, right? So what I expect to see from the Eagles today will be some overload blitzes, especially off his right side, make him roll to his left, and then some of these double-edged blitzes where you're bringing pressure off the perimeter from both sides. We saw a blitz just like this last week against Taysom Hill, also a very elusive quarterback, and that led to that interception by Duke Riley. It was a perfect defensive play call by Jim Schwartz. And again, it's all about containing Kyler Murray. It's not about disrupting and getting him off his spot. He wants to get off his spot. He wants to run around and make plays with his arm and with his legs. You have got to keep him in that phone booth, in that short little boxing ring behind the offensive line. That's where you ultimately can try and get to him as a quarterback, but it's all about containing him and keeping him kind of anchored to that spot.
Well, look, I think great minds think alike, or perhaps the key today really is about Kyler Murray, because mine is pretty similar. You're saying contain him. I'm saying get to him. We talk about not letting him be devastating with his legs. When he rushes for more than 50 yards in a game, the Cardinals are 5-2. They're 2-4 when he doesn't, that according to NFL media research. But again, we talked about the receiving core, how deadly they can be, and the matchup for the secondary. So if you're if you're preventing him from getting things going in the passing game as well as containing him, then they really don't have much of an offense. But we talked about the anchor of this Eagles defense being the defensive line. Brandon Graham mentioned it earlier this week, saying we know there's injuries in the secondary. We need to put pressure on the quarterback in order to help out those guys on the back end. So if this defensive front can be that engine that they are always talking about, I think the Eagles will have some success today. All right, and with that, it is now time to check in with the voices of the Eagles. Merrill Reese and Mike Quick are giving us their players to watch for today's matchup. Let me send it over to Merrill.
Amy, Glendale, Arizona. Eagles and the Arizona Cardinals. Every game is a big game, especially when you're still alive in the playoffs, and both teams are, as far as the playoff picture is concerned. Mike, who is your Eagle to watch today?
My guy today is going to be number 21, Jalen Mills. I think it's really important that Jalen Mills, the communication on the back end of this defense with so many new guys, and he's going to have to be the voice back there today, communicating with the linebackers and making sure that everybody's lined up properly. He's got a big job. I'm going to keep my eyes on Jalen Mills.
Okay, I'm going to keep my eyes on a lot of people, but especially on Josh Sweat. He has suddenly come to life, had a couple of sacks last week, and he could put pressure on Kyler Murray. Back to you, Amy.
All right, I love it. They're focused on a couple of defensive players today. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the offense. The Eagles have talked a lot about sparking this offense, and boy, did Miles Sanders light it on fire last week. Against the NFL's top defense, Sanders rushed for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, including an 82-yarder to the house. The second-year running back joined Mike Quick for this week's one-on-one interview presented by Pond Lahaki. Take a look.
Miles, first of all, thanks for joining us. You guys have gone through a tough stretch, losing 4 in a row, but you're now back in the win column, and mathematically, you still have a chance for the postseason. How do you guys approach these last 3 games, and what's the mindset?
Honestly, man, I can say it's very, very similar to last year. We're really in the same position, just focusing on what we can control, and that's these last 4 games, and knowing that we have a chance, we have to take care of these last 4 games, just taking it one game at a time.
You guys really got on a roll last year in the final quarter of the season, so do you think that's possible again with what you have going on?
Yep, absolutely. We did it with the same guys we got now, so why not do it again, you know?
When I look at the backfield, it's more than just having a quarterback in the backfield with Jalen. It's almost like having 2 running backs. How do you like sharing that running responsibility with Jalen?
It's good. It's really keeping the defense, on their toes. Of course, they were on their toes, same for Carson, but him and Carson have different elements, They're respecting him more with his legs, and that's opening it up for me. So when we get that going and it's working effectively, I think we can run against any defense in this league, and I think we showed that last week.
Miles, you've had a lot of different O-line combinations, but the constant has been Jason Kelce. Tell me about the relationship with yours and Jason Kelce, because it seems to be a little bit different than a normal running back offensive line guy.
Oh, man, I love Kelce. Man. He knows it. I respect him a lot. You ask anybody, I think they'll vote Jason Kelce as the toughest player on his team. He plays through anything that happens. He's just Mr. Reliable. He knows that he's a big part of the offense, and he tries his hardest to be out there, because he knows that we need him. And a captain like that doesn't come around a lot. So he's very reliable, very smart, and I respect the hell out of him.
With all of these different line combinations, how difficult is it for you, not only in terms of running the football, but when you have to look at all of the protections and the blitz pickups and things like that you have to do?
I wouldn't say it's too difficult. Honestly, we really have a good coaching staff, starting with Stout, and he does a really, really good job of getting the guys that's up that week ready for the games. I think we handle our business very well, despite of everything that's being thrown at us.
Speaking of your coaching staff, I spoke to Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, and I said, what is it about Miles Sanders that makes him so special? Deuce said right away without blinking, he can do it all. So when you get an endorsement like that from your running backs coach, Deuce Staley, how does that make you feel?
It's good to get compliments like that, but I know how Deuce is. He doesn't compliment me a lot, so he doesn't. He's always on me because he holds me to a certain standard, and I respect that, and I love coaches that coach me like that. I'm still working, and I'm still getting better each and every day, each and every game, every week, trying to be the best I can for this team.
So, Miles, I want to ask you the same question that I asked Deuce. What's special about your running backs coach, Deuce Staley?
I think his love for the game it goes unmatched compared to any coach I ever met. Like, he literally plays through us. He expects us to break long runs, break tackles. But when we do the little stuff like picking up a blitz, running the right route, catching the football, knowing where the blitz is coming on when you're hot, it's little things like that he gets excited about. He holds all of us to a high standard, and I love the way he coaches us.
Hey, Miles, you're going to face a 3-4 defense. You rarely see those. And a defense in the Arizona Cardinals that are going to come after you from all levels of their defense. What is it about that defense that makes them so difficult?
They give a lot of different looks, and they do a real good job of disguising their coverages. And the safety, Budda Baker, much respect for him and his game. And he's all over the place flying around. Great tackler. He's fast. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but every week is a challenge. I feel like we do a really good job of game planning and succeeding in it.
So, Fran, I feel like we could probably correlate a big game for Miles Sanders with a great day for the Eagles offense. How much does his skill set unlock the Philadelphia offense?
Well, I think ultimately it just comes down to the run game in general. And I think when you look at Miles Sanders, really he is at his best when you can get him up to the second or third level. And whether that's with their zone run game or their gap scheme run game or misdirection runs or the pass game, when you can get him out into space, that's where he can make that first man miss at a really high level. You look at him making linebackers miss. What he did to Malcolm Jenkins last week at the second level. He can make that safety miss in the hole. That's really where he brings his value. And I think when you look at some of his biggest plays here this season, a lot of them have been on those kinds of runs, on those draw plays where the defensive line gets sucked up. They're not a factor anymore. And now you can get him up to the second level. And when you add in a player like Jalen Hurts next to Miles Sanders, well, now there's another running threat in that backfield and just gives defenses something else to think about when you're talking about defending the run. A big part of that touchdown run last week, the defender kind of went backdoor, went outside of his gap. I'm not in that defender's head, but did he do that because he was a little bit worried about Jalen Hurts holding onto the football? I think that's certainly something to kind of keep an eye on here moving forward. But look, I think that's something that is talked about all around the NFL is when you have that run threat at quarterback, that helps your running back out as well.
Well, look, we heard Miles say he feels like this team could go on a roll at the end of the regular season like it did last season. Do you get that same sense? Do you see similarities between the last season and this one?
Yeah, I think there are similarities, but it's certainly a different dynamic with this team, right? Obviously, with the change at quarterback, with Jalen Hurts under center, that's going to make the dynamic of the team a little bit different and the feel of the team a little bit different. But look, there are so many of the same veterans, right? You look at Jason Kelce, right, along the offensive line, and you look on the defensive side, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, all these guys that have been here before, they can help show some of these young guys, some of the newer faces, hey, look, this is how we do things. We have been in this spot before. We can get us back into the picture for the NFC East. East. And so while it's going to be a little bit of a different feel when you have some of these same coaches, some of these same veterans, it's going to, you have some of that carryover. So some of that is certainly going to be present in this run, but it's not going to be the same feel as 2019. It's not going to be the same feel as 2018, but you still rely on those past experiences. Doug Peterson talks about it all the time in those press conferences, saying, look, we've been in this spot before. That it's not just a, hey, we know how the things to say in meetings, but it's that same kind of feel for those players, and it gives them a little bit of juice, saying, like, yeah, we've been in this position before. We can do it again.
Well, look, the Eagles just a game and a half back out of first place in the division, so today another must-win game. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will share our final thoughts before kickoff. Stay with us. The Philadelphia Eagles and Axalta Coating Systems have built a roster of all-pro teachers. Go to philadelphiaeagles.com/Axalta All-Pro Teachers to view this year's outstanding recipients. And that brings us to 15 minutes before kickoff in Week 15. In 15 minutes in Week 15, Fran, what can people get?
Well, people know that if you're 15 minutes away from kickoff, that means you at home have 15 minutes to save 15% or more on your car insurance by just switching to Geico.
All right, it's too easy. All right, as always, we will be right back here as soon as the game ends to break it all down on the postgame show presented by Rico. We'll hear from coach and players live, and Ike Reese joins Fran and me for instant reaction and analysis. It's right here as soon as the game ends. All right, now it's time to see which team is hotter in Arizona today. The Eagles and the Cardinals kicking off soon. Enjoy the game as always, and we will see you on the other side.